Hey guys, it's quote unquote your boy, Ballface 8020, back again with another great astrological reading. Tonight we've got Kamala Harris's, I'm sorry, the chart for Kamala Harris's general election campaign. The general election campaign doesn't officially begin until the nominee officially accepts the nomination. This happened at 9:33 Chicago time tonight in Chicago, or 9:33 local time tonight in Chicago. I didn't listen to the speech, not because I have anything against Kamala, but because I don't listen to speeches. I think that's just how I am. I'm not a speech guy. Maybe if I'd been born 50 years earlier and I had more of an attention span, but I'm not a speech guy. Um, so this one, there's not much to say, so I'm going to be, I think, pretty brief. I had said in when I did Kamala's solar return chart that her chart looked pretty good. It wasn't as strong as Trump's solar return chart. It wasn't even as strong as Vance's, but it was pretty strong. Um, I went into this. I did Trump's campaign chart and thought that was extremely strong. You can go back and rewatch the video if you're interested. I was expecting this chart to show Kamala losing, and it doesn't. It doesn't show her losing. However, there's nothing in this chart to show a win. So I think when you take that Trump's very strong chart, which shows a win, like pretty much Trump's chart says he's going to win. Not just his solar return chart, but his campaign chart. Uh, Kamala's solar return chart looks good. It looks like she could win from that. I don't think so because it's not as strong as Trump's, but there's at least something to that. This chart just doesn't show anything. So the it's rising. She's at begins at what do we got? 22 or something, 23 degrees, like 21 or 22. I'm sorry, 2149 Aries. That's where the ascendant begins. So the only real aspect it has is with this Mars in Gemini. And that Mars is with a super tight conjunction. You can see that there with fixed star Capella. Mars, Capella is a very fortunate star, so that's good for Kamala. But Capella conjunct Mars mainly just you know, connotes or connotates or however you say it, wasting money and nitpicking and stuff like that. So I would interpret that as meaning, and since that's a very tight aspect with the ascendant, that means that the campaign is going to be that the campaign is not going to be well run, and that it's going to waste a lot of resources in areas that don't matter. That would be the most likely interpretation of that. It doesn't mean that it's going to lose. It just means that it just says that the campaign's going to be. It doesn't even mean the campaign's going to be poorly run. That's my interpretation of it. But it means that the campaign's going to waste a lot of resources on stuff that doesn't matter. And if they're seriously talking about like competing in Florida and stuff, that would be an example of it. Um, the most notable thing about the chart, the one thing that I looked at it and was like, oh, like this Kamala could win this thing, is the sun, the sun's tight conjunction under 30 minutes with fixed star Regulus. Regulus is the most powerful, most important star in the sky. Connotes victory and kingship, stuff like that. I actually mentioned it in my Sean O'Malley video. It was the main reason that I'm so certain he's going to win that fight is his conjunction with that. However, I looked a little closer, and there's a pretty big difference between this and Sean O'Malley's. In Sean O'Malley's chart, his first of all, his Mercury was his main signifier in that chart, and that was applying to Regulus. Kamala's charts, the Sun is not a signifier for her. Her signifiers are going to be Mars, Saturn, Venus, and the Moon. We'll get back to that. We already talked about Mars in the third house, so Mars is okay. It's got that tight aspect to the ascendant, but it's not like nothing special here. The sun, I mean, it's not a signifier, but it's still important. and it is tightly conjunct Regulus. So you'd think, look at that and think, okay, maybe she wins this thing. The thing is, though, this is the sun is separating from Regulus. You see, the sun moves this way, like up counterclockwise, and Regulus, by it's a fixed star, meaning, I mean, technically it does move, but for practical purposes in a chart, it doesn't move. So the what this would mean is that if we were going to interpret this at face value, is that um, Kamala's queenship or peak has already come. We're in her peak right now, and over the course of the campaign, that's going to fade. It's going to fade away over the course of the campaign, which is in line with what we'd expect. Like I said, it's not an applying aspect. Now, if it was something like if the sun had been at, because Regulus is, where do we have here? Regulus is at 0905 instead of is at 9 minutes of 0 degrees 9 minutes of Virgo. If the sun was like, it's like zero. Honestly, if she had just started the speech like 3 minutes earlier, we might, which is when I think she was scheduled to start, then we might have something being like, oh wow, this points to victory. I don't know if it would be enough by itself when Trump's got all those strong things in his chart, but it would definitely give me pause. But the fact that it's passed, tells me that that's it. Her peak is come and gone. It's going to fade. The power that she has now is going to fade over the course of the campaign. So that doesn't mean a loss, but it doesn't mean a win either. It just means that right now we're at her peak. So, and if the election were held today, I think she'd win. I think it would be close. I'm not sure she'd win. I think she'd win if the election were held today. But the election's not going to be held today. The early voting doesn't start for another month. And by then, the effects of the Regulus conjunction may very well be gone. I don't know for sure. That's just how I'm interpreting it. I do want to talk about the signifiers. In this chart, the signifiers we have Mars, the moon, um, Venus, and Saturn. We already talked about Mars. Mars is in the third house. It's a neutral house. It is conjunct with a fortunate fixed star. However, this is a fixed star that doesn't seem to work too well with Mars. It is, looks like here, it does have a conjunction with kind of not a conjunction, an aspect with a sort of negative Mercury in the fifth house, which maybe indicates some communication problems. Kamala's not really a great communicator, but I wouldn't make too much of that. But anyway, the Mars is okay. I think overall, if anything, it's helping her, but I don't know. So that's the most important aspect and most important signifier in her chart. So that's okay. Okay. Let's talk about the other ones though. One other thing before we get to that. The Jupiter, the most fortunate planet. It's in Gemini. It's detriment. It's not a huge deal. It's just Trump's was in Gemini too because Jupiter's been in Gemini forever. The thing moves slow as shit. So it is in its detriment, but whatever. Its ruler is under the sunbeams, but it's not combust, and it is in retrograde. So yeah, it's not great in that front, but it's not bad either. The main problem though, Jupiter is in the second house, which is it's not as bad as the 6th, 8th, or 12th, but it's the closest thing to those you'll get. It is kind of a dead house, which would mean that the luck and fortune we wouldn't expect a tremendous amount. Again, doesn't mean that she's going to lose. Doesn't say she's going to lose, but it's not. This isn't a strong chart for talking about victory. Same thing with the Mars, which looks okay, but not where we would like it for a victory. Her second most significator is Saturn. Saturn is in bad shape here. Saturn is opposite a Venus that's in bad shape. So that's a nasty affliction. It's not horrible because it's separating. This is at like 17 degrees, and this is 17 degrees Pisces, and Venus is at looks like almost 22 degrees of Virgo. So it's not like the world's worst aspect or anything, and it is separating, but it is there. It matters. I'm not sure if I already said this, but Saturn is in retrograde. Um, let's see here. But again, not that big a deal. None of that's a big deal. What is a big deal is that it's in the 12th house. That's a bad house. So that's for her mission here. Her mission is to win the presidency or the campaign's mission. Because remember, this isn't a chart for Kamala; it's a chart for her campaign. The the campaign's mission is to win the presidency. Well, the planet that is in charge of the mission is in retrograde in a weak house, and that's not a very good sign. That's no pun intended. Then I think I said that last time too. That's not a good sign. That one is the first thing I'm seeing in the chart that indicates Kamala loses or Kamala loses. I'm not saying she will, but that is an indicator that she loses, that the campaign fails in its mission. The next most important signifier is Venus. And this one probably isn't that huge because this could kind of imply like the opponent of the candidate. But so you can kind of interpret this one either way. Venus is in bad shape. It has no essential dignity here, and it's in the 6th house. So that's another important planet in the chart that's in a dead house. And then the final thing here is the moon. Again, you could interpret this as her opponents in both of these, but I don't know. I don't really buy that. I don't buy that because it's not like this isn't a contest chart. It's not an orrery chart. It's just the campaigns. It's just the campaign's birth, the campaign's birth and eventual death. So we're not really talking about the campaign versus the Kamala campaign versus the Trump campaign. This chart isn't about that. This chart is just about the Kamala campaign. And so, with that being the case, these Venus and the Moon do have significance for Kamala's campaign. And Venus is weak. It's, again, no essential dignity in the 6th house. That would say Kamala loses. 6th house is bad. And then the Moon. Now, the Moon is on the fuller side. I don't know if it's still completely full, but it is waning. It's getting the moon is peaked already. It's getting weaker. This would indicate to me that again we've already passed peak Kamala, and that her energy is going to fade over the course of the campaign. On top of that, the energy of her campaign, her campaign's strength is going to fade as it goes along. Also, it's in the 12th house. It's in areas which is okay for it, but it's in it's in the 12th house, which is bad. So to me, like if I just looked at this chart in a vacuum, like it didn't have anything else to go by, and they said like this is all I have. This chart of Kamala's campaign chart. Is this a win or a loss? I would say a loss without knowing anything else. It's not like the opposite of Trump's, which like Trump's chart was just like that's Trump's campaign chart and solar return chart. Well, let me stop myself for a second. The solar return chart had some ambiguity. The Trump's campaign chart is clearly a win. That there's no other way to interpret that chart. Trump's campaign chart is an electoral win. I'm not saying that'll happen, but I'm saying that that's the only way to interpret that chart. This chart, there's more ambiguity. I would, just looking by this chart by itself, I would say this is probably a Kamala loss. But I'm not certain. It's definitely not certain. I wouldn't take it to the bank. I think Kamala probably loses for a variety of other reasons. This really doesn't have much of an impact on my judgment one way or the other. But I guess it is something you can add to the pile as more evidence, as some evidence she's going to lose. That's all for now. See you in the next.